Welcome to Classic Movie Salon. Today we are talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. Colleen's here, Tachi's here, Matthew is not here because apparently he's in a castle and cannot get a signal.
I hate when that happens.
I know, it happens all the time to me.
But not for anything, you can get Wi-Fi on the darn New York City subway, so I'm just saying, they didn't rig up that place by now?
Exactly.
It's 2017, people. The king would not have it.
I think when they were building in the 1500s, they're like, is there any way to keep like all cell phone signals out of this? Yes.
It's not forward thinking.
Some really big stones that are
big, right? Yeah. It's impenetrable. Keep
Exactly.
out barbarians and Wi-Fi.
So Matthew will not be with us, but and also just to let you know, we won't. There's no show next week, and we'll be back. I guess the first Sunday in July we'll be back. So, and there's 5 of them, so we'll have 5 shows in July.
July, lots of July.
Yeah,
5 Julys.
I'm fun.
Got a feeling it's going to be a warm one, metaphorically and otherwise. So let's talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. Hey, Marilyn.
Hey.
This, I'd seen the film before. I hadn't seen it in a really long time. But it was one of those, this is a film that you cannot forget. Like, it's just so, man, it's perfect. And it's another one of those just perfect films. Even from the opening credits on, it's perfect. Colleen, Tachi, do you remember the last time you saw To Kill a Mockingbird?
Oh gosh, I have to say it was probably like when I was in undergrad, so it's been been a little while.
Okay, cool.
Not too long ago.
Not too long.
Yeah, whenever it's on, it's like one of those things you just study.
Right.
It is perfect. I mean, they rebuilt the entire courtroom, a little bit smaller scale, but
I did not know that.
Yeah,
cool.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they built entirely the same courtroom.
It's a really well, we'll jump on that and also just on the structure of the film. But the one thing, the opening credits on this thing just suck you in. I mean, they are like zoomed in crazy close on all these objects, and you hear the kid's voice in the background, and just the way to work in just pure. Someone designed it. There's a credit, I can't remember who it was, but to use a crayon or whatever to go over the letters to create the title of the film was just wow. It sucks you in.
It felt so modern.
Yes.
Yeah, it sucks you in, and it felt so modern because that's a technique that you see used all the time now. It's not something that you think about with films from the 50s, films, pre-1960. You don't think about those things. And it's interesting because that was the time when they really spent a lot of time on the opening, both in film and television. Yeah. That was like almost the whole show or the whole film. And so now we've really gotten away from that, but it still feels so fresh and modern. I was in awe because I had forgotten about that opening, and I was in awe the entire time. I was like, this is just amazing. It did not feel like it was from the era it was from. It just felt like it was shot in black and white yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it draws you in. It's and you don't realize it as you're seeing it because it's obviously it's the beginning, but it's one of the underlying themes of the entire movie. This on the part of the children, the innocence and the not lack of education and understanding. This juvenile sort of significance, and it's hypnotic. It's the art. It's a piece of art.
And also that cigar box comes into play later in the story and is very important. So it's also a little kind of visual foreshadowing because it's not really a prop that ever shows up.
But the other things in the box do, and it weaves you through. Again, you don't know it, but it's underpinning the whole entire of. It sets you up, and you just so beautifully thought out. Just really, yeah.
I agree.
It is. And I have to say, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I have to, as you all know, I'm still traumatized from
I know.
Yeah.
So, whenever I hear, and remember, it's been a while since I've seen it. Whenever I hear Mississippi and, some
Alabama.
sort of
Yeah.
trial, or Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, some sort of trial in the same sentence in a movie, I'm bracing myself for some sort of riot or uprising or any of that. And it's none of that. It's not really, it's about the trial, but not really. To say it's about the trial is a misnomer.
Mm-mm.
It's really more about Gregory Peck as the lawyer and his beliefs and the kids. And it's just a menagerie of everything. So which I was like, ooh, I forgot. Good. It's not an intruder.
Right.
So
yeah, it is not.
Good.
But it also, and that was the one thing that I read the book in high school, have not read it since then. So that was, back before they had television. The reality of, I love sirens. The reality of watching it this time was, it's almost like a trick. It in terms of storytelling, because you get sucked up into the kids' world. There's all this stuff going on. The Boo Radley, the visiting kid from next door who shows up every summer, all the problems with Scout just to begin with, because she's a rebellious kid who, gets in fights and all the rest of it. But the way that they use those characters, or as in the book, to let you know what is going on. It's sort of like they're the tour guides of this world without you knowing that you're being guided. And again, I think that opening sequence, it just sucks you in, and you don't like it's not about the trial at all. It's more like they teach you about the world, and then they throw that in, and it almost feels like third act. Because
it's the premise. I think I've been thinking I've been thinking hard on this, because I'm a little bit, it felt different this time watching.
Yep.
And what comes to mind is that the innocence or lack of education on the children's part, or on Scout's part, she's younger of the two and different than her brother. So it kind of parallels to, I think, to the racism and the lack of intolerance and ignorance of the others.
Right.
It's just that that's where this power, because and today, where people just still refuse to understand and their part in it, and educated people who still today don't see what their part in it is, in racism, and so I don't know, that's what's been just going through the innocence, ignorance. For a child, it might be innocence or ignorance.
Right.
For an adult, it's not.
Yeah, for me, it bounced off of what was going on in Minneapolis,
Minnesota.
It bounced a little harder than it did in the past, because I thought that this was the past when I watched it, and I don't think this is the past anymore.
No.
It's just a retelling of what's going on now, minus the modern day cars and amenities. It's exactly the same thing.
And the internet.
And the internet, exactly. And exactly.
Because
even
it's
disheartening. Go ahead. Sorry, Colleen, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even Atticus doesn't really do enough.
No, you know what? No, they don't. And here's the thing. I generally blame people who don't do enough for not doing enough. But at the same time, I also understand that we are sheeple. Most people are not leaders. Most people, and I was just talking about this with someone this morning, that the average person is not a leader, and it takes an awful lot of chutzpah to stand up against everybody else, even if you know you're right, because the majority are going to go with the crowd. There's a lot of groupthink. So for you to say, well, no, I'm not voting for that, or no, I'm not doing that, makes you a pariah and an outcast, and that's a very hard life. So it takes a tremendous amount of strength and energy and conviction and being okay with knowing you're going to be outcast to say, I'm going to stand up for what's right. So in a way, I'm like, I blame him for not doing enough, but at the same time, I can understand where that came from, you know?
In terms of percentages, he's outnumbered. He's outnumbered by the law. He's outnumbered by the law. Like everyone else is using what is legal. And Atticus is trying to move past that at a time and in a place where that is almost impossible.
That's true.
And
it's true.
the two, we're going to jump all over the movie because in terms of timeline. So, and also if you haven't seen it, stop watching now because
spoiler alert.
There were a bunch of things, but in terms of dealing with the sheeple idea, when 25 guys show up in a bunch of cars to the jailhouse, we're way into the movie at this point. And Gregory Peck, it's also just in terms of design, he unplugged the lamp from the house. You have no idea why. And then the next thing you see, he's leaning against the door, reading a book with his own lamp plugged through the window. And all these guys show up and they are going to take justice into their own hands. And again, because the kids don't listen, because they're kids
and naive. I mean, they don't have naive, a clue.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't have a clue.
So they run through, and the three of them. I mean, what you watch Scout do to Mr. whatever his name is,
Cunningham, Walter.
She personalizes it, and I think the thing that it's sort of like when you have a discussion about, and this will seem weird, but distracted driving. There was some video that was flying around, and I'm sure still is, and it's just jump cuts of different people explaining how they text and drive, and they were like, yeah, and then they show each of their faces, the same people, as someone who walks in who obviously has had some surgery and has been in some kind of an accident. And,
oh, wow.
And it's a young woman who was in a bad accident and other people were killed in it. She survived, and it was a distracted driving. And how quickly they're in tears, how quickly they change. And that story that you tell yourself, both as a racist and as a person who thinks that they can text and drive, until you're sort of faced with, like, she is showing Mr. Cunningham, she is showing him what he is, and it seemed, and that is the most powerful thing that anyone could have said.
He couldn't even look at her. He could not even look at her. And that's how deep down, here's the thing with racists and sexists and people who perpetrate this. I personally refuse to believe you don't know what's going on, because when it comes to the point where you're called out for things and you can't look at people, or you're stammering and trying to find something is wrong. You just are looking for an excuse to justify whatever it is you're doing. At that point, when he couldn't look at her, he couldn't even justify what they were doing. So it's like, all right, let's just go. And
it's cowardly behavior, as you said. It's afraid to stand up for themselves. They have no, confidence or self esteem or power to stand up and say, I don't believe in this. I don't, and that takes courage. But it takes courage and
I think the story that they were telling themselves, because they were outside of the law to a degree, but where they were, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So the real law, they're within it. And it seemed like they would go as far as beating the crap out of Atticus to get him out of that door, but they weren't going to mess with the kids. And that was sort of the line in the sand for them, that they had been at a standstill for a while before the kids even got there.
So it was actually, the kids actually were what saved that situation.
Yeah.
So thank you, disobedient children, because they were the most disobedient things I've ever seen. I'm like, wow, to be from the South, you guys are really out of line. But that's really what saved both Atticus and Tom for the
Yeah.
time being. So
Yeah, exactly.
kids being
For the
there.
time being. And that,
Mhm.
and I think that was the other part of watching this movie, with everything that is going on in this country now and has been out in the open, well, forever out in the open, but in terms of like the numbers of Black men who have been killed by cops and the number of cops who have been convicted or even brought up, charges brought against them, is ridiculous. And it seems like it's then. Like, this now sounds like stuff that would happen during this movie's time in the 1930s.
It is, and it does. And you know, one thing that I notice this when I drive. Number one, the time for being, oh, well, that's back then, and I always knew it was back, not back then, and it still happened. But when you're face to face with it, that's when you start to be a little more careful. Like, you won't find me speeding or doing things, because I know there's a very real possibility that something could happen. And it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter the level of education. I was shown that before. And so no level of education, nothing saves you when they have it out for you. And so I always notice when I'm driving, and I'm not really a speed driver anyway, but if I need to get somewhere, I'll hasten my steps. So I'm like on the edge of a neighborhood that's, a predominantly Black neighborhood. So I'll be driving, and in my neighborhood, it's, business as usual, but I'll notice how slow everybody drives when I get to a certain point. And I'm like, oh, come on, hurry. And then I have to think, they're trying to keep themselves safe and alive. And it's that same thing, the same mentality from back there. Don't make too many sudden moves. Drive slowly so nobody has a reason to stop. You can't even walk freely because you don't want somebody to have a reason to say you're doing something. And that's what it's like. It's like for a good, 7 minutes, I'm driving normally. And then when I get to that certain part off of Sunrise Boulevard, you notice how it slows down. And that's what that is. And it's sad. It's sad.
It is.
You don't really think about it. And I'm like, this is really To Kill a Mockingbird. This is the same time period.
Well, Sandra Bland is not here because of not signal. It was that's why she was pulled over for
Right.
A signal. She shouldn't have been pulled over. I mean, So, I mean, this is. And it's another thing that comes to mind now, watching this again, is just knowing that I used to complain about how hard it was to be a woman, but I'm not a woman of color. I didn't go, I thought I had it tough. I didn't have it that tough. I haven't had to go through these things. I haven't, and I don't know what that's like. So it puts all these things. You watch something like this, and every other. I watched, Ava DuVernay's 13, and all these. Put so many things into perspective that there's white privilege, and you don't realize it. You don't realize it. You keep forgetting, and you just need to be reminded again and again and again. And the civil rights movement, I think that everyone just dropped the ball. It was like, okay, we did this. We're good, right? We're good. And nothing else happened after that of any significance or prominence to advance. The conversation just stopped. And it
seemed like, to me, and I was telling myself this story, that all of the kids who have now grown up with rap, like, that is their part of their white kids, that they're so used to watching, seeing, and hearing Black people talking to them. And I would think that it would become, and for some it definitely has, it would become sort of part of the culture and would slowly kill the racism. It sort of reminds me of the speech or the scene in Do the Right Thing when they're talking to Turturro's character about, like, he likes Prince, he likes Michael Jordan, but he's a giant racist.
Yes.
And this sort of like you kind of feel like this cultural shift comes, and it didn't. Like, I thought that this would, like, I thought the millennials were going to, and maybe they will when they're old enough to run for office. But I thought that just the pure numbers and sort of the way the culture was going, that it was, you know, in the 80s, rap was treated like it was, you know, a fad. And then in the 90s, it was a horrible thing.
No, you know what it was?
Shoot each other.
People thought that it was just a bunch of kids who were angry, and so they paid it no mind. They thought people were just ranting, and they're just a bunch of neighborhood kids. They dismissed it. They labeled it. They didn't, because these were street kids. So they don't have any credibility. Let's not listen to them. It ain't music. You know, it was not authentic, not pure. But I gotta I mean, I don't know. It was to me like sort of on the same lines of what punk was, and you know, so it hit me square between the eyes, and I would listen to them words. And just, it was like, oh no, they're telling you something, and you got to hear the words.
But I just thought in terms of like the evolution of the number of people.
But it's one of the biggest trends in music today.
It's not, and it's not even a trend. It is
music.
Right. I guess I was just telling myself a story that somehow that was going to affect more people white people in terms of like seeing the what this country is supposed to be, a multicultural bouillabaisse that doesn't work perfectly.
Well, you know what?
That's where we're headed.
I think the whole thing is that when you look at entertainment, so you look at music, you look at movies, to a lot of people that is not real. So it's okay to be able to see people of color in terms of athletics and music and entertainment, but that's not real. It's okay. I can turn off the TV or turn off the television and it's gone. But once you start infusing yourselves into local government,
politics,
once you start coming into politics, once you start getting jobs in the private and public sectors, now it's a different thing. Now I have to deal with you. Now I can't turn it off. So I think when we look at entertainment, it's a very different world. And I think it's a way to expose people to culture, but I don't think it's a true way to infuse people, because it's already looked at as a stereotype. That's something good those people do anyway. So
yeah.
I mean,
but they talk to society. The music had such a message. There's so much. I mean, the economic reality of athletics. It's just, I mean, the dominance and the political impact of what it does to a city and a state is just. I mean, how that doesn't transcend into politics and government. I think
now it not so much. It's we can see the dividing lines more clearly now in government than ever before, and words like white nationalist has never been part of the conversation. So
loud sigh and eye roll.
And in this conversation, the cultural effect of a movie that was made in 1962 about the 1930s. It's fiction, but it's
you're talking about the Depression.
But in terms of all of the things that about this story, like everything's true in some way, and even though it's fiction, but this is, as most entertainment was, this is a story for a white audience, and this is a story for a white audience being shown what is not working about racism, and being shown characters and behavior at a time that was oddly 30 years and change before. So to have that, to have the book be a Pulitzer Prize, to have that, for me to have read it in high school, for this movie to be such a big thing, and for us to still be here is what is sort of like in looking at what I was telling myself about. And that's a great point, Tachi. I never thought about the kind of like pretend world, and that definitely is in play. But this movie is, again, the pretend world, but it is I don't know. It seems like it's an invitation to question your racism.
You have to.
Exactly.
You have
but
to.
it's difficult for people to do that, because I think it's more difficult for the people who consider themselves to be liberals and consider themselves to be free thinking, because there is a level of racism, and often that's the worst type of racism. And so they are either like, okay, well, they're not talking to me, or that's number one, or number two, they think that they're so far evolved that they have the right to tell the people who are like outwardly racist, like the white nationalists, why this is not right, and this and that. But I'm like, have you looked and checked your own privilege? Have you looked at yourself in terms of your own racism? And sometimes I think people don't really understand the concept of racism. They don't know what constitutes racism. So I think that's a problem. There's no one solid definition that many people agree upon. And so they say, oh, well, I'm not racist because I don't do this, and this. I don't burn crosses. I don't look at it.
Right.
So I'm not racist.
It's changed its look. It's got, 21st century racism it's evolved, like everything else has evolved, and everyone has to
But it seems like it evolved into more people being out and out about it now.
You think?
Well, that's because we have...
Yeah, because we never had white nationalists
right.
on the news. We've never had a white nationalist on the news on a regular basis. We've never had news that a white nationalist
You mean
part of the White House and
oh,
for people
okay.
not to respond
Yeah,
like,
I get
what?
Yeah.
Well, that's because the highest office in the land, the person who thinks he's in charge, has allowed such a culture to flourish. And so when you give somebody license to do that, that's exactly, all of this was there.
Yep.
It was there under the surface. It just was not
Yep.
politically correct to say anything. But once you have an idiot who gets in office and says, oh, it's a free-for-all, which, is really the reason why this is happening now. So now everybody is emboldened. And I've heard this conversation a lot, that people feel emboldened to do, to say and do whatever. And it goes back, what they have to realize is that this is a different time. So even though you still have that level of people that will have these things hurled at them and levied at them, and they'll turn the other cheek and forgive. And then there's the other end of us, myself included, that when you throw rocks, I'm going to get a boulder and throw it back. So do something. So they don't realize this is now a different time. It's not like before. You might get your ass hit back if you try something.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it so dangerous and volatile, that you didn't have the level of, and I don't want to say complacency, because it was necessary for people of color not to uprise so much, but you don't have that same level as you did before. So
No, I agree with that. And the so close. It was a good one, and it just went away.
it'll come back. It'll come back.
Yeah, and it's definitely necessary for everyone to reassess themselves now, check themselves, and say, it's just like I was saying with Atticus, he didn't do enough, but within his, where he was and his having to survive, protect his children, he did. But everyone has to check themselves now and say, where are they at with it? What are they doing? Are they, what's their consciousness level of privilege and
And also, it's a day-to-day thing. It's a day-to-day.
It is. It is.
Like everything, and
it's just being a decent human and doing your best each day.
That's what it is. But when we were talking about like standing up, like the two guys who stood up to the white supremacist who was going after the Muslim teenage girls in Portland, and were both killed by that guy. And one being a veteran, a Republican, the other one being what you would think the Oregon liberal, and they both stood up for what they thought was right and died for that action. So now that is part of the story too.
Absolutely. I think that there is a certain and let me just say, because I don't want to make it about partisan politics, but we have to talk about the fact that
that's what this story is.
This is what this story is. At that time, though, it wasn't necessarily, you still had like an awful lot of, the Democrats weren't the angels. Not that they're angels now.
Right.
But, back then especially, you still had, you know, it was still this transitioning over from, for some people, to republicanism. So now the Republican Party, the way it is now, there's this, again, the spiral of silence, where you have sheeple, and there's some, there are those Republicans who know something is not right, who know it's wrong, and but they choose not to do anything. I do blame you in that case, because you do need to step, but it's difficult because you're standing with, because for this many people to stand with this level of hate and just turn their backs and not do anything.
They've been infected by power and greed, and, you know,
everybody wants to get their stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
and then, you know, nobody wants to be the one to say, no, this is not right. This is not, because there are so many things that are deeper that we don't know about politics that probably could go on. So it's.
But the stakes just seem a little higher.
Very high. It's
with
big.
What, to not say something about what's going on now. Like I don't understand. This is the George Orwell 1984 thing. This is like it in action, and the truth doesn't mean anything. Words mean very little. What you said in the past and what you say now, you can't be held accountable. There's no accountability, and because it moves so, the news moves so quickly.
The internet.
It's hard to, but I mean, like, in terms of the number of things that happen with this particular administration, the numbers, just in terms of like stories, is just relentless, and the number of players and all the rest of it. And that's where I don't see how anybody could look at what's going on and think this seems odd.
Well, nothing gets taken too seriously anymore, because in 48 hours, everyone's forgotten it. You know,
absolutely, because we're so inundated with news because of the internet, because of everything, 24-hour news cycles. So after this, something new will come up, and it goes away. Even if it's pretty heinous. I mean, things are some awful stuff has been going down. And yeah, but think about it. If you don't watch television very much, or you don't pay attention to news very much, which is the case for many people, and you live in a very insulated community where you don't have to deal with this, it's very easy for you to fool yourself into thinking, I'm really not part of this. The problem nor the solution, and I really don't have to do anything about it. It's very easy to do that, especially the people, and as an academic, I can say that academics are the worst perpetrators of this, because we love to sit there and write about the things and do studies on it, but there's very little action when it comes to it. And this is not all academics. There are some really socially conscious academics that are doing things, but, you know, I can speak from experience. Like, I'll go to something that's talking about, okay, when the Haitians were being kicked out of the Dominican Republic, even if they were born there, they had a huge forum with both Dominican and Haitian people that were in South Florida that are notable. Where were the academics? It was me and like a couple of other people. So I'm like, so you can write about this ish, but when it comes to doing something, you won't do it. And then even when you try to have like conversations, and this is not everybody, this was like at the institution I was at, people would slowly dissipate when it turned to like race or something like that. And I'm like, you fake, yes, and I hope you're watching, you fake academics. I need you to go back to whatever bloody institution you went to for your PhD and get your money back, because they failed you. So you have things like that. And I really feel like academics are the ones that have the power and the intellectual know-how to be able to lead people out of this, but you don't, because you're too busy trying to get promotion and tenure, publish or perish, and just keep your job. It's a shame, and it's sad.
No, I agree, but everybody, again, much like Atticus, for Atticus to just say some of the words that he said to those people at that time, and to be a single father, and to try to teach his kids the same ideas, and to put himself in the physical danger on just in general, but definitely the outside the jail scene. That was the most prominent of all of it. And to be really rooting for him, and not even, so let's jump into the trial. It was so There's nobody with a half a brain in their head that could come to that conclusion. It was just, that conclusion was, no matter what was said in that courtroom, that was going to be the conclusion.
Yeah, so before it started.
The trial, well, like they were saying, like what's his name was saying, the trial was really just a waste of taxpayers' money because you knew what was going to happen. The fact that they, what's his name, the brother, what is the little boy's name? Not Scout, but
Jem.
her brother.
Jem,
yeah. So Jem, right? So
Jim.
the fact that he was saying that Jem was saying when they were deliberating for so long and it took them 2 hours, and he said that's a good sign, right? He was really idealistic with like, okay, usually these things, they go in for 10 minutes and they come out because they know they just want to lynch these people. But they took some time, which lets you know that there was some sort of, deliberation and holding back. And at the end of the day, groupthink took over and they just did what they wanted. But when you just look at the other lawyer, the lawyer for the prosecution, first of all, you could just tell, okay, this is open and shut. I already know what's going to happen. He almost didn't try. That was the thing. Now, it was the other side. And of course, the prosecution in a trial are the ones that have to prove the case. The defense is just defending. But it seemed like it was the other way around, where Atticus was really prepared and trying to bring all these things out. And okay, he only has one good arm. The prosecution didn't do anything, which lets you know this was like rigged from the start.
It's kangaroo court. You have to prove guilt. You don't have to prove innocence. But in this case, he's trying to prove that Tom is innocent, and the guy didn't, is trying to prove he's guilty. And so was Mayella's father, and so was Mayella, because she was, we know she's threatened, and, they're not pillars of society. They're quite the opposite, that they're, the dregs of, this is the town. So, I mean, you're not rooting for any of these people. You don't like them. And, the build up in the tension in the scenes are just, it's a one-armed man, but then it comes back and you're a strong one-armed. So it's this great back and forth, this great, you sit there. I know how it comes out, and I'm still hoping it's just maybe
exactly.
It'll be different. They are taking longer.
It's going to be different this time.
Yeah, but Jem pops in that with his innocence, and he's a different kid than Scout. Doesn't occur to him. He's 4 years older, and and I love that they're sitting up there with the black kid, the black folk, and just right in. Done. Other kids of other families wouldn't dream of of going that route, so it's this pureness in their hearts, and not been taught that way, thankfully, and the optimism and hope that
I think this is the reason why, the thing about Scout fighting all the time, I think that's where that comes from. And it's also like a metaphor for her fighting for what's right, basically.
Justice.
Yeah, fighting for justice. So she's the one that fights, but she said, "Well, they said you did this. I had to fight them for that."
I had to do it.
But she got into a fight with a kid she was trying to give money, right?
No, the teacher wanted to give Walter a quarter for lunch. And so the kids were causing a commotion. Everybody knows the Cunninghams don't take money. And so then, she had to beat up Walter. Why she had to beat up Walter, I'm not quite sure, but she did.
I think she just wanted to fight.
I think, she was just, the kid wants to roll down the street in a tire. So, yeah.
The interesting thing, to break the fourth wall on this, because we've stuck to the story and the characters. I'm so impressed. We never do that. We always dive into the making of, which is my fault. Rock Hudson was supposed to be.
Yes, yeah.
Can you imagine how different this movie would have been?
Yeah.
And
they would have had a love interest for him. He and Miss Maudie would have been getting down. when the kids went to bed.
Exactly.
And I heard James Stewart also.
Oh, I didn't hear
Was
that.
a possibility. Yeah, was it?
I can more easily see that, but
Right.
I guess the way they got Gregory Peck was the team, Pakula and Robert Mulligan, the director, and Alan Pakula, the producer, had done another film prior to this one, which I'm blanking on the name of, and Gregory Peck had seen that one. So between the quality of that film and them getting the book, his answer to why or how he took the role was he got the book and he started reading at night and just kept reading and read the whole thing through and called them at 8 o'clock in the morning and says, "When do I start? I'd love to play this role."
Yeah.
But the way he plays this role, the way like he is, I know this is way before any kind of pharmaceutical stuff, but he is one chill human being. Like he does not like, he knows it's going, like he knows when the guy at the end spits on him. And also just in terms of pure filmmaking, it's nothing said. It's all eyes, expression, and physical movement between Gregory Peck and the other actor. And you know that the guy who spit on him was scared.
Yes.
And that was all that was needed to be seen. There wasn't going to be any advantage to beating the crap out of him because it was just going to go back and forth. Also with the kids, these kids had never acted before on film. And they didn't continue acting after this film. The only one did was the neighbor kid who kept visiting in the summer.
Right.
He did continue acting.
Oh no, Scout had been in Twilight Zone before, but that was television, not a movie.
Yeah, no film.
Yeah, no film.
But the thing is, like, they're leads. Like,
they carry half the film. I mean,
I say more than half because in terms of screen time.
Yeah.
I think we spend way more, because even when we are spending time with Atticus, I'm not saying there aren't scenes without them, but most of the scenes are with them.
And a lot of dialogue, a lot of dialogue.
And movement, all the, I'm watching as the kids are going in and out of the fence and it's so believable. And granted, they're pretending, but it's still, for all of them they just they just rocked it. It's because kid actors it's so hard to not, like, sometimes you can see him acting, and it was so long. Marilyn, thanks for hanging out.
Hi, Marilyn. Thanks for being here.
Bye, Marilyn.
It was for the two lead kids to have never done this before is, and also again weird that she and him did not continue because there was nothing but praise for their performances.
Absolutely. Where they? I mean, obviously they were in school. Where are they from? Do you know?
I think they found.
Jen was from Alabama. I'm not sure about Scout. I don't.
Oh, actually, they're both Birmingham, Alabama natives.
Okay.
Okay.
And
they had the accent right, and that would have been hard probably to put on. So
yeah,
right.
absolutely
for children. Yeah.
Right.
So
and
not
the other cool actor to see on screen, and it was his first time, is Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
And everything he did was supposedly all his hair and his skin. He stayed out of the sun. He dyed his hair because he's nonverbal the whole time as well. And you just, wow, does he sell it?
And I guess that was a producer. It was Horton Foote had seen him in The Midnight Caller at the Neighborhood Playhouse, and that is why he got the role.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Again, tiny, like 4 scenes, and you feel for him. I mean, he does. It's both creepy and weird, but because of Atticus. Because of the Atticus and the sheriff's behavior with Boo, the stories that you have heard about Boo from these kids would make you think, well, they're probably not going to leave Boo, him in the room by himself with kids if he's, a crazy serial killer who chops people up, and they do. So you have the kind of, when she said it's okay if you want to pet him, like that seemed okay. And so but it was only because Atticus leaves the room and he knows he's in there that you're like, oh, okay, so they're really cool with this guy.
And he introduced him by name first,
right,
Mr. Arthur
exactly.
Radley, you know, and he had previously just kind of not, you know, sort of danced around the whole issue with him, probably not knowing how to explain it, thought they're too young, almost like the issue of racism, which clearly he had not addressed that fully with the kids either. So you see this convergence of the two issues, because that's about when, you know, it's I mean, previously the other one was when Tom, you know, we lose Tom. So that's the setup for the first, you know, issue coming sort of to a very tragic conclusion. This one's a little bit more hopeful, but, you know, it's just both two very naive. They misjudged Boo, and the whole town misjudged Tom. You know, everyone did, you know, so, and race.
Well, you know what? These small towns, and at the time, you know, Birmingham is more of a major city now, because it's not far from Atlanta, but back then it was not a major city. And so, you know, these small towns basically had, they have a culture, and they, myth and legend goes around a lot. There's a lot of gossipiness, and of course it grows wings from person to person to person and turns into something else. So, you know, you have a lot of that, and I think that was probably a lot into play. You know, the story at the beginning where she said took the scissors, that probably didn't even really happen. That was probably something that turned into something else. And
poor
I mean, that's what happened. Yeah, the poor, exactly. This is all hyperbole. So, you know.
Yeah, no, it's different life than big city living. So you know, and Atticus handled that, you know, so adroitly. Hello, good afternoon, and your garden is so. Yeah, I mean, he's just the ambassador, you know. So, and he's a pillar of the community, so he has to be this sort of an ambassador to everyone.
Well, keep in mind that he's also a little more savvy. And
right.
I'm not saying that education equals savvy, but he's a lawyer. So obviously he had to go to law school. He went to school twice to be able to get to this point. And so and you could see in the explanation when they were asking, okay, after he gave the, whatever it is he paid him in for legal services.
Hickory nuts.
Hickory nuts. And so Scout was asking, are they poor? Yes. Are we poor? Yeah. But not as bad, not like that, you know. So there's a different, you could see he was talking about it in different levels.
So he was the country version of street smart.
Exactly.
You know, he had that, you know, kind of savvy that, it's.
And he also talked about the idea of trying to walk in someone else's shoes and see things from inside their skin, and he used that skin as the analogy for that. So that the thing
that's key,
right. It wasn't just a different analogy. It was, and I think when you that part of his character, for that to be in play at all times, because once he said that, and you look at, like, I would have punched the spit guy. I would have punched him. Like, I'm going through, like, I would have punched him.
I was waiting for a backhanded slap.
Like that is the, you know, and he is a turn the other cheek guy, and he knows that and he's right. It's the smarter way to go, and especially at that time when he's trying to do what he does, he's outnumbered. He's never going to be able to fight, ever. There's never going to be a crowd of guys to protect Tom in jail.
But also he becomes one of them the minute he joins into one of them and stoops to their level. And it's biblical even to turn the other cheek. So it really, he's not perfect, right. But he aspires. He aspires. So
you know, the interesting thing is when you look at all of these movies and in real life as well. I saw a meme the other day it's a map of the Bible Belt, which is, you know, most of the South over to Texas and whatever. And the Bible Belt, it also has listed, it's the Bible Belt, but it also has the highest number of meth labs. And it listed all the problems that the Bible Belt has. And the funny thing is, you look at what role does religion have in this? Most of these southern towns were very heavily biblical and Bible thumping, yet it did nothing to preach the gospel of treating others as you would like to be treated yourself. Right. It doesn't do any of that. So it's like, it makes you wonder at that point, what good was the church if not preaching kindness and doing, it's interesting how they got around this, yet these are the people that are Bible based.
Well, there's always been people who, attend, but are just, showing up, but not, not practicing what's being preached. It's just they're making the looks, the appearance, the window dressing, because it's again, they're sheeple. They need to be seen as if,
and also the Ku Klux Klan is a Christian organization.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You have to be Christian to be a member of the KKK. So, and white. But
that too. That too. Thing.
The other thing, in terms of casting, in terms of screen time and all the rest of it, Brock Peters, who plays Tom, that is a lot of acting to do in a very short amount of time. Yes. Like what he has to do, and just pure acting. And I don't know how many takes they did. I'm guessing not a lot, because his performance and also like the camera is so on his face, and when he breaks down, like you believe it. You totally, even everything he does with the left arm, and it's so great. And I'm reading online that there's a great article on tcm.com about this, but they said that he had been, as most people, typecast as villains until he did this role, and went on to do Carmen Jones, Porgy and Bess, Soylent Green, and he was also on Deep Space Nine. He was on Star Trek for.
He had a good career.
Yeah, he had a career. But for an African American actor to get a meaty role like this in 1962 in this kind of film, and he just nails it. Like, kids are great, everybody's great, but like his screen time is like, it's tiny, and they're just, even just him sitting next to Gregory Peck, like he physically, his facial expressions, everything, like you believe he is that guy in that position at all times.
Very nervous, very tense, very confused, scared, you're there, you're all the way there. And like, why, what the fuck is going on? It's just, he owned it. He completely owned it. Phenomenal, just phenomenal. Yeah. It's heartbreaking. I mean, I read a story too, that Gregory Peck was looking at him while he's crying, had to look away to keep himself from crying, as Brock teared up on the stand. And that was completely spontaneous. It wasn't in the script, they said. It was not planned. It just organically happened.
But you know what the whole thing is? It's because they're still living that at that time.
Yeah.
That is not, nothing history.
No need to pretend.
No, it's real. It's still happening at that time. So it's, I can imagine, again, as a Hollywood actor, you probably are not necessarily far removed, but a little more removed than you would be if you were living in Alabama, Mississippi, in the South. Exactly. Yeah. So then to come there and shoot it, I'm sure it really affected him.
But you hear stories of secretly how dangerous it was to shoot in the South and that they had to creep around, creep in, creep out. It was trouble getting hotels for the cast, so he probably was, I mean, not unimaginable. There's no way to,
And there was one shot that really, camera shot that struck me in terms of choice. It's the obvious choice is to always show the person talking. You always show the person who's the active character in the scene, or whether it's a quick emotional reaction, whatever. When the judge is introduced, and we've already met the judge, but when the judge is introduced, the camera stays on the courtroom. We don't see the judge. We see everybody stand up, and it's a wide shot, so you see every level, and you see, you know, how everyone does it, and everyone sits down, and you don't see the judge walk in and sit down until way later in the movie. To me, it was the fastest way visually to show where the society was.
Yeah.
Everyone stands, but they stand separately.
That's the distinction you need to make.
It's such a smart shot.
Draws the line of upstairs and downstairs, and that's as you know, the oldest story.
And all it is everybody just getting up and sitting down. That's the whole shot, but they stick with it the whole time. And
that was a brilliant choice.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing. The amount of restraint when you have so much to play with. And visually, I mean, this thing is gorgeous from frame 1 until the end. Everything, lighting, locations, makeup, clothes. There's nothing wrong with this film. Even the tiniest characters, like the father, who's probably the weakest cast member of all of them, but he's playing a very kind of one-dimensional character. So
I love Calpurnia. To me, she's important in the story, as you know, this sort of backbone at home to help with the kids, to support Atticus, and she seems, you know, she's quiet, but she's, you know, almost want to hear what she's got to say about the whole thing, you know. Yep. The case particularly, because she seems to have a certain amount of anger that I can read on her face, you know, that she doesn't get to talk about.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. That's the reality. There was often a lot of sacrifice, and we see this across movies where there are Black women that are playing, that are helping or assisting, where you are trading yourself and you know, for whatever little sixpence that you get for this, including, remember when he had to go to the jail or whatever. Now, I made this assumption, it didn't say, but I was assuming she had children. And so usually, you know, the whole thing is he was probably asking earnestly, can you stay? But in her head, she probably knew, I have no choice but to stay. Yeah, I can stay. So often what happens is the welfare of your own children is pushed to the side for your employer's children and your employer.
And she got, when he took her home one night, she just automatically got in the back of the car. And I'm like, say what? You know, why? Now is he...
Oh, yeah, you don't sit in the front seat.
Right.
Now.
Yeah.
I'm like, she ain't Miss Daisy.
It's like
what the hell?
But it's like
you know?
it's like the bus, though, I also think.
That's true.
I'm like, why would Atticus do that to Calpurnia? But I guess
it's not that he wanted to. That's what the order of the day was, and there's already so much trouble. Why add more to it?
And also, they were smart enough to get Tom out of town. Like, they know the deal. They know who they're playing with. Even the sheriff knows, like, let's get him far away from this where no one can find him.
I know. I just upon first glance, it just comes and you're like,
so let's close out the show and the movie by talking about the scene when the kids are walking home. Jim thinks he's being followed, and then Scout can hear it too. She's in a ham costume, which is the like, if you could ever take add just a little bit of whimsy to a murder scene, a kid dressed in a ham.
Because she lost her dress and she lost her shoes.
Yes. So she's walking all barefoot in a ham costume.
And so Jim gets attacked, and we find out that Boo Radley saves the kids and murders him. and then it's the sheriff coming to explain to Atticus, and again, it's this conversation about saving the taxpayers' money and what's right and wrong, and the sheriff saying, we've lost one man. He's pretty much like, seems like we're kind of even on this.
But the dead bury the dead. It's an interesting bunch of dialogue that comes in that right there. There's some profound words spoken.
But also for them to quite literally take the law into their own hands, and not do what they're, both of them know exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're not doing it because they're recognizing that system doesn't work anyway. So and
there's a greater good at that point.
Yeah, and also Boo Radley, for all intents and purposes, he's a hero. He saved them, and also the whole little sequence, which they did so well because they didn't spend a lot of time on it, the hole in the tree with the gifts that he kept finding. We only see the first one, and then we see the two dolls, but we didn't see everything in between until he opens that cigar box, is again what we saw in the opening credits. But yeah, that last scene with Atticus and the sheriff is it is almost like they're coming up with the closest thing they can to justice between the two of them, and because no matter what, they, there's no way that sheriff saw any of this court case and thought, yeah, he did it. There's no way. He knows that this is the system. This is what's going to happen. So let's just take care of this. Boo Radley goes home and starts carving kids, I guess, out of stuff.
More soap dolls.
More soap dolls, exactly.
I mean, even protecting Boo is a kindness which is rarely seen. So interesting, but nice, and it sums up more of what we didn't, think we knew about Atticus and
exactly.
Yeah.
And the shot where after Boo carries Jim home, and you don't realize he's in the room until she starts explaining, and she said, he's right there. I kind of jumped a little bit because I didn't realize that he was in the room.
Great reveal.
That was great. Yes.
And for him to just stay in the corner, hidden from everyone, but still stay there.
Exactly.
And it's that not that he was a giant, but is that gentle giant thing. Like, that this guy is more than capable of violence. We just watched him kill somebody, sort of. Shadows and whatnot. But to Kill a Mockingbird, it's on Netflix streaming. If and when you can ever watch this movie, watch it, because I especially if you haven't seen it in a while, because I hadn't, and man,
I'd say it's worth owning. Even download it, buy it, keep it in your permanent collection.
And it's a movie that's
important.
It's important in a way now that it shouldn't be.
Unfortunately, yes.
It might always be. I don't know how close we are to solving this, but it keeps the conversation going and keeps people checking themselves as they need to constantly.
Yeah.
Just to kind of say that it was probably terrible, but I kind of have no hope. So it's like, I think these movies are important. They're important, but they're not going to do anything, because all we do is we have these movies. Look, since celluloid film in black and white, we've told these stories and nobody listens. Nobody does anything. Nothing, not nothing, but very little changes. So it really is going to, unfortunately, take something big or catastrophic for people to at least, maybe, start to think about it. I don't think we've come to that point yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess if you look from 1962 to now or 1930 to now, yes, a lot has changed. But the underpinnings of what was wrong previously, whatever's changed laws in terms of segregation, education, voting rights, all that stuff, is the underpinnings of all that is still in play.
It's just been technicalities, but the rest
But then, you know, again, you look at what has gone on with police shootings. You look at Flint, Michigan. You look at any number of things, and it's, you know,
The justice system.
There's a couple of guys in Flint who are going to jail, and rightly so, because they did the wrong thing, and it didn't, you know, and ruined a bunch of lives. And again, we're still here.
Because attitudes have changed, but attitudes have not changed, even though the law has, and you can't legislate hearts and minds.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So on that hopeful note, remember, act locally, think globally. You can have you can have a cool social media neighborhood, and you can have as cool a neighborhood as you can possibly make in your own neighborhood. But wow. So we will not be around next week. I'm going east. We're going to take the week off and watch more movies, but we'll be back in first Sunday in July, whenever that number is. And until then, Colleen, Tachi, always great hanging out with you.
Lots of fun. Thank
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you in a couple of weeks. Oh, and I'll see you Thursday.
Bye.
See you Monday.
Yeah, week from Monday. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Enjoy, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.